Hello everyone, welcome to another Guild Wars 2 build video. We are doing another Guild Wars 2 warrior build, okay? And this is going to be pretty cool actually. I've been really excited. I've been thinking about this build for quite a while, and I'm kind of excited to show it off. I don't know what the best mode for this build would be, but I found something, and I've spent a lot of time and money putting something together that I think will actually be pretty effective and kind of fun to play, really. And what I'm going to call it is just the Skull Grinder Berserker. That is what I am going to call it. So I've been wanting to do a Berserker build for quite a while, and finally I actually came up with an idea that I am okay with. Because see, the thing about me is that I like power builds the most, and I really don't enjoy condition builds for the most part. However, Berserker is very much a condition class, and because of that, you really need to play with conditions in some form. You can play Power Berserker, but it's just much better if you play Condition Berserker. So, what I've come up with is actually a hybrid build, which does a variety of conditions and raw chunks of damage. And so we are going to actually see this in action. So let's get into the build, shall we? So for the equipment, first of all, I'm using mostly, I've actually got Grieving here, which is kind of interesting. I was going to use Sinister, which is condition damage, power, and precision. But I already had Grieving. I had the Funerary armor set, and I figured might as well make use of this. So we're actually using Grieving gear, and that's a pretty good, I think, for a hybrid build. So, and we're using Runes of Balthazar, which is going to bring our burning duration up to 100%. I actually hope I'm not capping out on that too much, because that's increasing that by what, 45%. Yeah, so I really hope that we're not capping out on that. But yeah, so we do actually have 100% extra burning duration, so any burning that we inflict is going to be quite useful. So, it also gives condition damage, and then also when you use a heal skill, nearby foes are burned, and then also if you're struck below 20% health, you gain quickness. That's not going to be too useful. It's only for 5 seconds, and the cooldown is 90 seconds, so that really is not that useful. The more useful thing is using the heal skill, because the cooldown is 10 seconds, the heal skill's cooldown is 20 seconds. So there is that. And next we've got Mace and Torch, and I would consider the Mace probably required for this. And also, by the way, the goal would be to use like either Grieving or perhaps Sinister or Rampagers stats, but Vipers is totally okay. I mean, it's power, precision, condition damage, and expertise, so that definitely works. My mace, I just didn't have another mace. The only other mace I have is Soldier's Gear, but I figured Berserker's works. So this is not going to be perfect, by the way. As you can see, I'm using like all exotic gear, so it's not going to be completely totally optimized. But on the mace, I've got increased burning duration, 20%. That's probably what's making us cap out on burning duration. I probably should apply that to bleeding instead, so the Sigil of Agony. Because we do inflict bleeding with this build. So the main thing behind this is Skull Grinder. So you guys will see. I would consider the Mace and Torch required. Just if you're going to be able to play a Skull Grinder, there might be other ways to make this kind of hybrid build, but yeah. Okay, and the secondary weapon I have is Hammer, and I've got an Assassin's Hammer, actually, which is probably not ideal, but it works, and you could probably put some good sigils on here, like the Agony or Smoldering or whatever, something like that. I didn't spend too much time on that because this is my main hammer here, and so I didn't want to have to like go through all the trouble of having to like spend extra money and everything. But probably you would want to put the Smoldering and the Agony sigils on here. I don't know if they can like both work at the same time. I think they can though. But anyway, so that's what we're going to use as the hammer for a secondary weapon. Although the hammer is not required. You could actually use a greatsword. And let me just select the stats. Because you can go sinister. Sinister stats, power, precision, condition damage. And it's not really great because... it's not really great because the greatsword is not a conditioned weapon. So there is that, but... you could, in theory. And then we've got, of course, the hammer is what we're going to use. As for the accessories, I'm using kind of a mix. I've got mostly power, precision, condition damage, which is Rampager's stats, with the precision being the main stat. And then, however, the amulet... oh, no, that's Rampager's as well. Okay, so, yeah, the accessories are actually all Rampagers. And then the gear, that's Grieving, and the funny thing is I originally set out to use Sinister, but I'm not actually using any Sinister gear, so that's funny. But so let's go on to the skills. So, oops. Okay, so for the skills, we've got the mace skills. I mean, Warrior Main should be familiar with these 3 skills very much. Actually, all 5 of these skills very much. We've got the mace, which is going to inflict some weakness. Now, the weakness is not affected by condition damage, but we do have a little bit of extra condition duration, and that is going to be inflicted by that. Next, we got a block, and then also it inflicts vulnerability when you counter it. It also grants you some adrenaline, and this build is all about adrenaline. Also, I'm not ready to test out the build. The block gives you adrenaline, and it's very useful because the build is all about adrenaline. So you want to make sure of that. Also, I didn't realize, look at the tethers between these traits when you move the window around. I never noticed that they do that. Okay, fine. There you go. He's dead. You wanted me to kill him, so I killed him. Alright, so, and then next we've got some hard CC, and that's always useful. Hard CC is very useful, which actually is going to trigger Body Blow, which we will talk about. And next, of course, we've got the 2 torch skills. Like I said, any Warrior Main should be familiar with this. We've got Blaze Breaker, which is going to make like a shockwave, and then it's going to apply a stack of Burning for 12 seconds, and also some Cripple for 3.5 seconds. So very useful, up to 3 targets. And 5 times. So if it actually is able to actually hit that target 5 times, if you got like a really large hitbox or something, then it could... I'm not exactly sure. I'm not as familiar with Berserker as I am with Spellbreaker, but if you could hit them all 5 times, in theory, it would apply 5 stacks of Burning for 12 seconds. Next, we've got Flames of War, which is going to light yourself on fire, so you become a mobile fire field, which is pretty cool. So you basically, and you also remove conditions, so you got a little bit of Condi Cleanse on there. And then when the field expires, you damage foes and burn them again. So very, very useful. It only lasts for 5 seconds. So you've got the burning here. It doesn't say how often it burns the foes. Like if it pulses or something like that. It doesn't say about that, but it's very useful because it's applying burning. So there you go. Next we got the healing, utility, and elite, and for the healing I've got Blood Reckoning, of course, because it is very, very useful to gain adrenaline. You're going to gain some adrenaline. It also recharges all of your burst skills, and also for 5 seconds you're going to heal for a percentage of your outgoing damage. That helps because if you're dealing a lot of condition damage, then you're just going to heal a lot for 5 seconds. So very, very useful for that. And Blood Reckoning is actually going to be very, very useful for when we actually enter Berserk mode. So keep an eye out for that. Next, we've got Outrage. And I just love Outrage. It's a stun break, which is awesome. It's not stability, but it is a stun break, and it also gives you a bunch of adrenaline. Very, very simple. Just break out of a stun, you gain adrenaline, and that's it. Next we got Signet of Fury. This is so good because you could benefit from the passive effect, and you can also benefit from the active effect. Everybody benefits from the effect of gaining all that adrenaline. But in addition, you also get the precision, and critical hits are useful in this build. So the precision is going to actually help you a lot when you're not using Signet of Fury. Next we've got Shattering Blow, which I always love. It is where it inflicts 4 stacks of bleeding. It does a little bit of damage. It's not really mainly used to do damage. The main purpose behind it is to give you stability so that you can go into Headbutt. And Headbutt is really the main thing that this is going to lead into. Headbutt is going to be the hard CC, but it's also going to give you 30 adrenaline. This gives you 10 adrenaline. It's going to be useful, but if you just have no adrenaline and you just really want to just get right up there into Berserk mode, then yeah, just use Headbutt and you get that. Or you could use Signet of Fury. Signet of Fury will also give you the adrenaline. But if you don't want to sacrifice the precision, then you could just use Headbutt. Enter it with a 3-second stun, right? Enter the fight. It's really good. Next, we're running Strength, and we're running some physical skills. Definitely don't run Peak Performance. Perhaps you'd want to use Restorative Strength, because the Might will actually really help. You're benefiting from the power and the condition damage. So then we've got Body Blow, which means stuns, dazes, knockbacks, pulls, pushes, and launches, inflict bleeding and weakness. Now the bleeding is so useful here because it's 17.5 seconds of bleeding. It's so insanely good. Gonna do quite a bit of damage. And that's with every single stun and daze and everything, so your Headbutt is doing that, and the Shattering Blow doesn't do that. But the Headbutt does it, and then also your Mace 3 does it, and then also your Skull Grinder skill does it, and then when you switch to Hammer, I think your Hammer 4 will do it as well, because it's a knockback, yes. And then also Earthshaker will do it, and Rupturing Smash will also do it. So all of those skills are going to inflict extra bleeding and weakness. So very useful. There is a variation of this build, which I will get into, but we're not there yet. Next, I'm running Confusing Hammer, and that's really good because we have the confusion, because we have the condition damage, and we also have the reduced recharge of hammer skills. If you're not running a hammer, then you definitely don't want to take this. Definitely something you could take if you just don't use the hammer very often is Berserker's Power, and that will also be very useful. I don't think, yeah, the Berserk mode doesn't actually do the Berserker's Power anyway, but either way, this could be useful, the Berserker's Power. If you don't want to use that, if you tend to use the hammer often, then you could definitely take the Merciless Hammer. I'm actually going to run this with Berserker's Power. If you choose, you can take Greatsword. This is where I get into the variations. You could take Greatsword, and you could get a lot of extra might generation because you do have the precision. You're going to be getting a lot of critical hits. So if you really need that extra might, then you could switch to Greatsword. You could also switch to Might Makes Right, and then it's going to be really cool because you use a heal skill and you gain 5 might, so you heal for just that extra little bit, which is useful since Blood Reckoning only heals for 3200, and if you're used to natural healing if you play Spellbreaker, then that's a severe downgrade. But so next we're running Arms, and Arms is really good because it's good for condition builds, but Strength is good for power builds, so it's really good that if you're using a hybrid build, you want to use Strength and Arms. So here we go. We got using a burst skill grants Fury. Very useful because you're not capped out on crit chance. Your crit chance is 63%. So, or if you switch back here, it's 58%. So with Fury, it's going to be 78%, which brings you about up to what you would be on many of my Spellbreaker builds without Fury. So very good. You need that Fury sometimes. Then we've got gaining expertise based on your precision. You've got a lot of precision, right? Because you've got Rampagers, and you've got Grieving, and you've got Sinister, possibly. So expertise is always going to be useful for you. You could do Opportunist and take some other kind of immobilizing skill, but it's probably not recommended. It's really not, honestly. So really, mainly the thing you want to do is Wounding Precision. Next, I've got Rending. It used to be called Rending Strikes, I think. I've got Sundering Burst, which is where the burst skills inflict vulnerability, so 5 stacks of vulnerability, and then 5 more if it's a critical hit. Now, if you've got Fury, then it's really good, because you could do Berserk, then do the Primal Burst skill, Blood Reckoning, to where now you've got Fury and all the adrenaline to back it up. So then you can inflict an additional 10 stacks of vulnerability. That's 15 right away. So very, very cool. Yeah, for multi-hit burst skills, the interval is 5 seconds, but this is a multi-hit burst skill, I believe. Oh no, it's actually a single target, so there you go. Anyway, next we've got condition damage when you have Fury, so we're getting Fury, and then we're going to get condition damage from that. Next we've got, on critical hits, you have a chance to inflict bleeding, that's always useful, and increase bleeding duration. That's going to be so useful for our Skull Grinder. Very, very useful for that. And then last we've got Furious, which grants you maximum 250 condition damage based on your critical hits. Now, you're probably not going to get 25 critical hits in 10 seconds, but still, it provides some extra condition damage, and it's much better than the alternative, which is dual wielding, which you're not going to get, and burst precision, which you could use. You could do that, but I prefer the condition damage. So next we've got Berserker, and of course we've got the access to Berserk mode and all that, and we got some interesting, really cool skills. The reason why I made this build is that there are some really interesting Primal Burst skills that I just never even hear about, and I never even know about. And I wanted to get a chance to test out some of these really cool skills, like Skull Grinder, mainly, without making some sort of meta build, because the meta is just Sword Torch. So I've got Smash Brawler, first of all, because mainly you want to be using your Skull Grinder skill as much as possible, and as often as possible, so you want to reduce the recharge of those Primal Burst skills to 4 seconds. Very, very useful, because you're only in Berserk mode for 15 seconds. Without Smash Brawler, they're 5 seconds, right? So you can only use 3, or maybe 4 if you use Blood Reckoning. This you can use, probably you could, I don't know, you might be able to fit in, is it the same amount? I don't know. I'm not going to do the math on camera right now. I'll mess up, and then, anyway. So Always Angry is a good thing also, because the Power Berserker doesn't get to take advantage of this, but we do, because we're a hybrid. So Power Berserker doesn't get to take advantage of the condition damage. If you're using axes or something like that, you know, you're getting to decapitate and all that, which is a cool skill, but you're not getting to take advantage of the 7% extra condition damage. However, we get that. So whenever we enter or exit Berserk mode, we're going to get that for 15 seconds. And the recharge is going to be is going to be 12 seconds. So, I mean, there you go. And it's just I don't know. It's just it just makes sense. Okay, it's really good. So anyway, next we got the Heat the Soul, which is going to reduce the recharge of our torch skills, which is also very useful. Extra condition damage when you're wielding a torch. I don't really see any other way that you would want to do this. Ferocity is not going to really be that useful to you. Dead or Alive could potentially be taken if you just really, really need that extra little bit of survivability. Could be useful. However, Heat the Soul is probably the most useful one. Next we got Fatal Frenzy. When you enter Berserk mode, you get Fury, Quickness, and Swiftness. The important thing about this is the Fury, because when you've got Fury, you gain extra condition damage. So, excellent. And you also gain extra critical hits, which have a chance to cause bleeding, and they also, if you inflict a critical hit with your burst skill, you inflict 10 stacks of vulnerability. So, very, very useful. And lastly, we have King of Fires. And Berserkers usually should be familiar with this, because the meta build is just middle. So, King of Fires, we're going to inflict some burning when you critically hit an enemy. Remember, that's useful because we're going to gain some fury and everything. And it also increases the duration of burning. So we inflict burning with a few of these skills. We actually do not with Skull Grinder, but the torch skills do. So you need to increase the duration of that so that it ends up being okay. So we've got that. So those are basically all the traits and the equipment. So we're just going to go out and test it. And I haven't done a ton of testing on this, so please forgive me if I don't play it optimally. I'm not the best at Berserker, but I really found a build that I feel like is pretty fun to play. So we are here in my usual testing spot, and we are going to go ahead and set ourselves on fire, and then we're going to do that. And as you can see, we can actually just gain this adrenaline Skull Grinder, but the guy was already dead. So we need to find a couple of targets. Okay, we're gonna find this branded char. Let's see how well we can, or how long we can drag on this fight. Okay, do that, and then we started off with all of that. We got the thing. We spent a lot of adrenaline, so because of that, you know, we gain that Berserker's power. Okay, now the Skull Grinder didn't actually hit. I'm trying to actually hit with the Skull Grinder. I'm not very good at playing this. However, this will work. Skull Grinder, boom. And we inflict all those conditions, and we end up actually being able to survive quite well. I'm actually pretty impressed with the survivability. I thought it would be less. I'm used to having so much survivability in Spellbreaker, and, you know, just being able to survive as Berserker is not really something that I thought would be really easy, but it is easier than I thought it would be. So we're going to do this, and then we do the King of the Flames of War and all that. I'm not really good at the rotation right now, but you get the idea. Essentially, you're inflicting a crap ton of conditions. The Skull Grinder is so useful. You're inflicting so many conditions. They can't move, they can't see, and so I think it's a fun build to play. I'm having a really good time playing this build. I might actually take it into World versus World briefly, but probably not for very long because the Spellbreaker is so much useful there. But anyways, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe because it helps out so much. I actually recently updated my Patreon page, and I've got a whole lot of new rewards and a lot of new goals and everything to reach. And so I would appreciate that so much if you could do that. Just visit it, take a look. If you want to support me, then feel free. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you just so much for watching, and I will see you next time.